Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week, legendary guitarist Michael Schenker, the band Temple of Rock featuring Francis Buchholz, Herman Rarebell, Doogie White, and of course Michael have a new live package out. It's called On a Mission, live in Madrid. You can get it on CD, DVD, and Blu-ray. I certainly highly recommend it. So I got Michael on the phone to talk to him about this package, and then I reminded him of a quote that his brother Rudolf gave me in an interview previously, about a year ago, where he said there wasn't room in the Scorpions for two Schenkers, and suddenly the focus of the interview turned from On a Mission live in Madrid to, oh yeah, let me tell you about my brother Rudolf. So without further ado, let's listen to Michael Schenker talk about the new album On a Mission live in Madrid, his brother, and much more. Here he is, the one, the only, Michael Schenker. We are speaking with Michael Schenker, the guitarist extraordinaire. New album is On a Mission live in Madrid. Michael, I actually have to tell you, I bought the album from Japan because it came out a bit earlier.
You.
And it's fantastic. So let's start with that. Just talk to me about the album, and of course, working with Francis and Herman from, of course, the Scorpion days as well.
Yeah, well, it was like kind of came out of the blue because the record company, we already started to put together a European tour, and then while we are doing our routing halfway through, the record company wanted to make a live album, and so we had to figure out where to do it to make it fit in. And Paris and Madrid was. I always wanted to do a live album with a Spanish audience. They're always great fun, and so never did it before. And so here was the chance. We found this great theater in Madrid, and so and it suited everybody involved. It fitted into the routing, and it had all the the things that we needed for a special recording, which was an acoustic idea to do a 3D listening recording. And so they put lots of microphones everywhere. And then when you actually listen to the album and you have the right equipment, it sounds like as if you're in the audience. I haven't experienced it yet, but that's what it's supposed to be. And so the album is out everywhere now. And we had one shot. And we found out later with that special way of recording, we couldn't even fix anything because there's so many microphones out there, and the ambience, you can't get rid of the wrong notes. And so we couldn't even do, I had a thing that I didn't really like, but I left it on there because I couldn't fix it. But we had a great show, a great night, great audience, and it was a success.
Yeah, it really was a success. So let's talk about the band Temple of Rock. Now, it's still called Michael Schenker's Temple of Rock. But it seems to me, as we've gone through these couple of albums and all that Herman is still there, Doogie is still there, Francis is still there. Is it a band, or is it still a solo project for you?
No, we have been touring consistently and recording for 4 years now. And so basically it started to click when at the European, after Pete Way got sick, and we asked Herman to ask Francis if he wants to join and help out, and Francis did. And so at the same time, Doogie joined the band because I had to do, I had to kind of, I did an album with Michael Voss, I asked him for guide vocals, and then he ended up, and then when he started singing, I said, well, why don't you do the album? I had no idea what I was doing. I had songs, but then he started to sing, and he became the singer, and then it went into all of a sudden William Shatner shows up, and all these great musicians, Carmen Eppes and Simon Phillips and Chris Slade and all of these incredible musicians. And so when I was going on tour, he wasn't available to tour with me. So, but because we had Robin and Doogie singing on the album too. Robin helped me out in America, and then Michael Voss did Japan, and then when it came down to Doogie, Pete Way got sick, and we asked Francis to help out, and that's when it clicked, and that's when I made the first DVD, just in case, you never know how long it lasts, and then we made the Bridge the Gap album, and then we made the Spirit on a Mission album, and here's another DVD, and that's like 4 years later, we have been consistently out there, and so we're having a break now, and we're making the next record in 2017. That will be our third album. And Temple of Rock, the idea is to develop it into its own entity, into its own style, with Wayne Findlay, since Spirit on the Mission, also making contributions on the songwriting level. And so we have discovered an additional songwriting team between Doogie, him, and myself. So the idea is that after 3 albums of Temple of Rock, we should be able to have enough classics, definitely after 4 albums, to stand on its own feet, and so that Doogie doesn't need to sing covers anymore. And so here we come to the next step. In the meantime, now I am putting together the Michael Schenker Fest, and I'm going to be doing a festival in Sweden, and it's the three original MSG singers with Gary Barden, Graham Bonnet, and Robin McCauley,
right.
and even the original rhythm section of Assault Attack. And so, but the idea is, while I'm developing Temple of Rock to stand on its own feet, I also want to present my past with the original guys, and so eventually I want to add Temple of Rock to that show. I want to make it a bigger show, play less gigs but bigger places, and make it especially for the newcomers who never experienced, the days when it all happened. They get a chance to see the classics, that the most popular music of Michael Schenker from past and now, to see it with their original singers, and that's what the goal is for me.
Yeah, so let me ask you about that, because I know about this sort of Michael Schenker Fest at Sweden Rock. Now you're describing that it might be more than that. It might be more than just this one-off. You want to develop it into sort of a touring entity?
I have gotten to the point when we did 4 years of Doogie singing UFO, Doogie singing MSG, Doogie singing everything I've done in the past, and also singing his own stuff that we created with Temple of Rock. So we have reached the point where Temple of Rock is developed. After the 3rd album, I would say definitely as a part of the show, Temple of Rock can stand on its own feet. There is already a few classics that looked at as classics and as songs that stick out. And so, but I am also very, very eager to play my past now with original singers as well. So instead of Doogie singing, copying the singers that were involved in the original days, I want those guys to sing, and because they are available and they love doing it, that's why it actually can be realized. And so the idea is to go out, have it called Michael Schenker Fest, and it's basically brings it to a whole new level, and it presents itself in the most original of what it used to be. And so that way, that show, all my most popular music is going to be presented with its original singer, with the exception, of course, of what I did with the Scorpions, with Klaus Meine and Phil Mott. But that is as close as I get it right now, to have Graham Bonnet and Gary Barden and Robin McCauley involved, and then when we are ready for Temple of Rock, add that to it.
That's great. Now, do you think that's something that you also might bring to the studio, where you go in and do 12 songs and 3 is Graham and 3 is Robin and 3?
I have no idea. That's not really an issue right now. The issue is the next Temple of Rock album will be done in 2017. And now I'm focusing on, we already have we do 3 shows in Japan. We're working on the UK, and we basically trying to make that the next touring project for quite a while. And like I said, putting it on to the next level and making it bigger and having much more of a show going.
And so, so let me ask you about relationships with a couple of these guys. Francis Buchholz, when I spoke to Herman, he said that he had to sit down with him and have a talk because there had been all kinds of
lawsuits and all kinds of nastiness. And of course, the Scorpions did the 50th anniversary remasters, and they left Francis out of it. Was your relationship also strained with Francis, or you were different than all of that, where you just say, hey, come on back?
What was the last part?
Was your relationship with Francis also strained, where you needed to sit down?
No. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been. I have nothing to do with it. And basically, my first part of my life, which comes in three parts, I made unconsciously my musical contribution, to the world unconsciously. It had a big impact. I didn't know that because I was just doing it for fun without expectation. Rudolf told me in the 80s that, hey, Michael, they're all playing your style, guitar style here in America. I said, what? You must be joking. And then in my middle years, after I helped the Scorpions out for the Lovedrive album and opened the door for America for them, I left the UFO when I was 23. My brother Rudolf was already 30, and I was done with that whole thing. I had experienced all the peak and stuff, and I wanted to, sit back and enjoy experimenting, and developing on a personal level as well. And that was my middle years. And so what happened the 80s were basically a more commercialized, they commercialized the 70s. And that became the 80s and simplified it. And so I guess I wasn't needed there at that time because the artificial commercial world is not for me anyway. And so I started my own recording studio and did my experiments with music and so on. And then in 2008, all of a sudden I had this urge, I want to be on stage. I never liked being on stage, but I guess because of the development of the middle years made me now, develop me to the point where I can now consciously enjoy what I, in the first part of my life, unconsciously developed. And in the middle years, they're responsible for understanding and being able to enjoy this now. And so I don't know what happened. I never followed the scene. I never watched what anybody was doing. The only thing that I knew was that, after I had to fight my way out of Lovedrive because they didn't want to let me go. They asked me to help out, and then they didn't want to let me go because, everybody, in America, all the managements, they wanted to sign the Scorpions, and they thought if I, leave the band, that it would collapse. And it was their big chance, to finally make it for themselves, for the Scorpions as well. The Scorpions basically followed everything UFO did, even though I'm 7 years younger than my brother Rudolf. He didn't really get a break until he was 33 years old with Blackout. And so, but he called me back after Lovedrive, and he asked me if he could also use the black and white guitar design. And I said, okay, if that's what he would like to do. I was his favorite guitarist, and I thought, well, maybe he wants to promote me or whatever, I don't know. And then he also asked me if I could give him all my melodies I wrote for Coast to Coast. And I was wondering why he would want that, but, I gave it to him. And, it's the true of my brother. I didn't have it. I do my thing anyway. And so, then I was approached to do the Scorpions box, just recently, and they wanted to add some extras from my past with the Scorpions from the Lovedrive era, and I became very disappointed when I was reading that the bio, the Lovedrive, how the whole Lovedrive thing happened was completely was wrongly written, and I was very, very disappointed, and then I realized what Rudolf had done. He had asked me to play the black and white guitar. He had asked me to give him the Coast to Coast melodies. Those were the most tastiest parts, and they never mentioned that I wrote the intro to Holiday, which sets up the song very nicely. And so apparently Rudolf never missed the concert not performing those two songs. So basically he was trying to distort and make people think that there was not really any Michael Schenker. There was just that Rudolf Schenker and Matthias who did it all. And I found out later, this is all after 35 years, I found out I had a contract with the Scorpions. I was sixth member. There should have been a picture of me in there. And I find out now that some releases didn't even mention my name. And so basically, it over the years now, after all these years, people forgotten the past. It makes it look like it was all Rudolf and Matthias, and Rudolf actually can't really play guitar properly, and that's a fact. And he knows everything that I have. He knows everything from me, because basically I started the Scorpions with Klaus. When Klaus and I joined the Scorpions, they were a cover band. They were just playing pop music and stuff. And when I was 15, I wrote my first song, In Search of Peace of Mind. And that song and the rest of the songs I wrote on Lonesome Crow, but it was credited to all of the Scorpions. I was 7 years younger than them. I was only 15. They were already over 20. And I had no knowledge about who gets what for what. The UFO were teaching me that the person who writes the music gets the credit for the music and the one for the lyrics. I went like, wow, this is amazing. Anyway, so if I look back now, I'm realizing that the first international recognition was because I was a 15-year-old guitarist who immediately made it, got recognized worldwide. And but all the songs that I had written were divided by all band members, and so I was already taking advantage then, And so basically, the second part of Scorpions was Uli. He was the foundation artistically, and then Lovedrive, Ike was coming back, helping them out, and that's how the Scorpions got that big foundation. It's not just commercial success. It has the musical, the artistical setup. It has a political with Wind of Change. It has all these different aspects. But Rudolf, very, very, my generosity was very, very, very sadly abused. And I don't appreciate that. And so these days I'm staying away from the Scorpions as far as I can, especially from Rudolf. And also, I can't trust him anymore. I don't know what else he has in his trick box. The last thing they did was Wind of Change. They cut Herman out. They cut Francis out from. They were responsible with them for their commercial success. It wasn't those three. Klaus is the only one with a real talent, but it wasn't those three that are calling themselves the Scorpions, proudly working with the brand name. That brand name has become a brand name because of different eras and different components and different inputs from different people. And so it's very sad that something, has become, on that Scorpion side, everything has become numb and done, and it has nothing to do with music anymore. They milked what they could milk for the last 23 years with that manager who just died, and they haven't done anything since Herman and Francis left. So why would they cut out these two guys who were, their mates all this time? And it's so sad. It's so sad that people can be so desperate to be in charge of everything that is success. It makes me sad that there is so much desperation for this. And it probably ends up, if you have been very successful, it probably ends up being addicted to it too. It makes it even worse. Who knows what makes the world go round for that kind of attention-seeking people. I don't understand, because one moment they are all friends and they're all mates, and the next moment they're fighting each other and they're fighting about money. It's crazy.
And they won't talk to Francis. Now, one of the questions I was going to ask you is your relationship with your brother, but I think you've answered it there, because when I spoke to him, well, if I may, when I spoke to him last, he said there wasn't room for two Schenkers in the Scorpions, and you've said in an interview, and you said, pardon me?
Rubbish.
Yeah.
It's absolute rubbish. The Rudolf cried on the phone, begging me back to the Scorpions when I left them, because I went there to help the Scorpions out. I had just left UFO. I was 23 years old. I was peaking. I was already number 5 guitarist in America. I was already had a hit in '76 with Lights Out, and then Too Hot to Handle, and Only You Can Rock Me, etc., etc. I had done it all with 23, but while Rudolf was already 30 years old. Then they found out that I left the UFO, It's Strangers in the Night, and Matthias couldn't do the album. He was not capable. He was too young, too inexperienced. So Rudolf, he asked me to help them out. I said, okay, I helped them out. When I finished my work, they were so blown away, they wouldn't let me go. And by that time, it already went around the world that Michael Schenker, who just left UFO, rejoined the Scorpions. So they got rid of Matthias because they needed me in the band. That's basically how it went. And then when I started touring with them, after I put my black and white guitar on, my black and white outfit, and I started touring with them. After 2 weeks, I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it playing Uli's songs. I was a guitarist with a focus on pure self-expression. I wanted to purely self-express, develop as a guitarist. I did not want to be part of the artificial commercial world. And I didn't want to have to climb and go the same way again as I just finished with UFO. I already experienced all of that and knew it wasn't for me. So Rudolf called me back after I ran away. He was crying on the phone. He was begging me to please come back and continue because they have a great future. And so I was embarrassed by his approach. I came back again, and again, I'm 7 years younger than they. They had very easily can talk me into anything. When I was 15, they were already over 20. When I was 23, they were already 30. So I never felt, especially also being a very shy person, that I was strong enough, to stand my stand and talk to them directly in the face. So I ran away again. And then they must have made a big promise to Matthias to get him back, who probably was already very disappointed. And then they changed the story around to make it sound good, that, I had to take my brother because it's my brother. Bullshit. They backed me into the Scorpions, and the fact is I did not want to be part of a commercial touring band anymore. I wanted to do and go my own way. That's why Rudolf asked me for the black and white guitar, and that's why he asked me for the coast-to-coast melodies that I wrote, and that's why they ignored the intro of Holiday. Nobody got credit for that, by the way, if you study that. And so he could easily they were simply enough to be copied, and he presented that as his work for over 30 years and built a false reputation for himself. That is basically what I was so upset about, that I was so generous giving him that name. Of course, I would agree to that extent. There is no space for two Schenkers, because if I would have stayed with the Scorpions, my brother would have never experienced what he experienced. Okay, that's the only reason. The script was written like this, I guess, because my three parts life is very, very incredibly interesting. That I have, looking back, that in my first third, I made this contribution, a musical contribution that was later in the 80s used by other people when I had the desire not to be in the scene. It's almost like it was like an automatic dance of making space for who needed to be there, simplify things, and present the 70s in a simpler way in the 80s to people with a hope to educate them, universally speaking, and to make people understand music easier, because if you go too fast, too deep, people can't follow. That's why when you go to school, you go through steps. And so I agreed at that point, and I always told Rudolf, if I would have been in the Scorpions, if I would stay, you should be so happy that I wasn't there, because if I would have been there, your place would have been a different one. So, but I personally think it was meant to be like that. But I would have never thought that 30 years later I discovered a disappointed, cheap-like or mispresentation of my art that was basically stolen, and he, and up to this day, then he dyed his hair blonde, and now then he started pushing further and further, and now he's become an addict, a fame addict, and he now doesn't even understand anything anymore. He pushes things further and further. Now that I'm with Dean guitars, he wants to even further make people aware of that he is the guy with the Gibson black and white Flying V, and that it was his thing. I gave my brother Rudolf Schenker I allowed him to play and use the black and white Flying V. Okay, right. And as a result of that, with that, and I gave him the song to make it his, and that was my work. And as a thanks I'm getting is that when he had a big success with Holiday and with what was it called, Rocky Like a Hurricane, and then Wind of Change. He made that whole black and white theme. He made it his. He had a whole the biggest magazine in Germany called Stern. He built the whole interview over several pages, all based on black and white. It's unbelievable. He just is a con artist. He steals everything that I have done. I'm his younger brother, and he thinks he can get away with it, which he did, until they approached me to be part of the Scorpions box. And I said, this is unbelievable. And let me tell you something else. The first time I got a little bit skeptical about this whole situation here was actually before the Scorpions box, when my sister wrote me an email and said, our brother is a greedy wanker. I went what? That comes from my sister? You must be joking. That was the first time I got goose pimples. I went wow, what's going on here? And the next time I got an email by mistake that was meant to go to my brother's new girlfriend, and it said, fuck, I love you, Hasty, and fuck the rest. I went, wow. The same guy who made a speech at my wedding that I am a selfish person, that guy, man, I have been playing the bloody, what do you call it, Sündenbock. It's a German word, Sündenbock.
Right.
It means it's the person you can put all the blame to. But that's what I basically have been for him. It's all the bad things go to me and all the good things go to Rudolf. And he's a junkie. He wants to earn and own all the good things. He wants to be the one that gets recognized for it. It's too crazy. It's actually sick already. And then when the Lovedrive box came together, then I realized what Barbara said was absolutely true. That guy is lost, And so,
right.
Sorry, but that's the way it is.
No, and
it's the truth. It's the truth, and people who don't believe it, they should do some studying, because it's all moderated, it's all monitored in past history. It just has been a long time. And, Rudolf called me to say happy birthday to my 60th birthday, but he was saying it to my answering machine. He said, Michael, I would have never thought you'd get that old. Yeah, maybe he was hoping that I would never get that old so he can own my image, because he has not created his own image. He adopted all of what I, as his younger brother, Michael, put together with UFO in the 70s. He adapted, and he wanted to present my image as his image in the 80s to the world, and that's so cheap.
Yeah, and of course, I was going to ask if you were going to do a record with him, but I guess that's not going to happen. Now we're running out of time.
I have to stay away from him.
I know,
Who knows what else he has got in his trick box? That guy is a con artist. He doesn't play music. He does his stuff with words. I do it on a guitar. He wings himself through with tricks. A con artist.
Now, I could go on forever and ever, but I was told to stop at half an hour, so I'll finish with this. And out of my own personal, because I love this band, you played with RATT for a very short period of time. You did the MTV Unplugged, and I believe a couple of Japanese shows.
Somebody actually just called. I think I have to stop.
Okay. All right. So I'll let.
But
go ahead.
I did it as a friend for Warren DiMartini.
Okay, and
see you later, alligator.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And there you have it, folks. My most entertaining chat with guitarist Michael Schenker. The new band is Michael Schenker's Temple of Rock. The new album is On a Mission, live in Madrid. Also available on DVD and Blu-ray, and features past Scorpion members Francis Buchholz and Herman Rarebell. Thank you for listening. Please head over to my Twitter at Mitch Lafon and check me out there, and the One-on-One Mitch Lafon Facebook page. Until then, thank you for listening. Please, if you enjoyed this, spread the word, share with your friends, and there you go. Thank you, folks. Bye for now. Oh, my.